Welcome to the deep dive. Getting a pharmaceutical product from just an idea, that initial spark, all the way to the patient who needs it safely. Well, it's this journey just packed with layers and layers of really rigorous quality control.
Absolutely. It's not just about the brilliant science happening in a lab somewhere. It's checks and balances, meticulous ones, at every single step.
Yeah, it's this landscape where precision isn't just like a nice to have, it's the absolute foundation.
Exactly. Compliance, incredibly robust processes. These are just paramount. Everything has to be effective, obviously, but also fundamentally safe for patients. That's the bottom line.
And today, we're kind of peeling back the curtain on a role that's just vital within that whole complex quality world. Our mission is a real deep dive into the core responsibilities, the requirements of a specific specialist role. It's a CSV specialist, computer system validation in pharmaceutical quality control.
And we're basing this entirely on, well, quite a stack of source material that lays out this role in pretty granular detail.
Yeah, it gives us a really comprehensive picture, doesn't it? It describes what it takes to fill this position. Everything from helping set up brand new labs
Right, and managing cutting-edge equipment.
to navigating these really complex digital systems and leading teams of
It's a
scientists.
fantastic roadmap, really, for
Mm.
understanding the often hidden work that underpins pharmaceutical quality, especially, and a source mentions this, within a company aiming for exceptionally high standards referred to here as pharmatox.
And for you listening right now, this deep dive, it's kind of your shortcut to understanding this crucial piece of the whole pharma puzzle. It's a way to quickly grasp a really vital, highly technical area, revealing the immense scope of expertise needed to guarantee the safety, the effectiveness of the medicines that, touch so many lives. It really shows you the depth of commitment just within one single role.
It really does. It's far more expansive than maybe just traditional testing comes to mind.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The source material kicks off right at the beginning, detailing these foundational responsibilities, particularly when you're setting up a new manufacturing plant and its QC lab, the physical space, the initial systems.
Right. So their involvement starts practically at the blueprint stage, you could say. They're
Mhm.
assisting in the actual establishment of this new plant and the dedicated QC lab. And the primary goal, as the source highlights, is making sure everything integrates smoothly.
Smooth integration.
Ooh.
What does that actually involve day to day?
What's ensuring the equipment, the systems, the processes, they all fit seamlessly into this new environment. It's way beyond just deciding where the walls go. It's about designing a space that inherently supports, compliant and efficient workflows right from the get-go.
And that smooth integration needs expert QC input right there in the facility design phase. Not just paint colors, right? It's critical functional stuff.
Exactly. Like the source mentions lab layout. They need to weigh in heavily on that. Why is the physical layout so important in a QC lab?
Well, it dictates pretty much everything, doesn't it? Workflow efficiency, for one, how easily samples move from, say, receipt to testing,
Right.
maybe to storage,
Hmm.
and also minimizing the risk of things like cross-contamination or just simple errors. You need a logical flow, right?
Absolutely. Imagine, sample receipt needs to be separate from chemical storage areas. Analytical testing areas distinct from, say, microlabs if you have them. A poorly designed layout, it can create bottlenecks, increase the risk of mix-ups,
Yeah, I can see that.
and just make it harder to maintain those strict controls that the regulators demand.
So they're essentially designing the physical space to optimize that whole testing process from the moment a sample arrives until the data is what, archived?
Exactly. Every single step needs to be considered within the physical space. And the source also emphasizes their input on utility requirements.
Utilities, like water and gas. Seems basic.
Well, things like purified water, compressed gases, seems basic, but why does quality control need such specific input on these during design?
Because they're not basic in a pharma lab context, are they? They're often critical components used in the tests themselves.
Precisely. Or they're needed to run sensitive equipment. Purified water, for example, is used for making solutions, cleaning critical glassware. If its quality isn't absolutely pristine and consistently monitored
It could mess up the results.
correctly, it can compromise the accuracy, the validity
Yeah.
of the test results. Same goes for compressed gases, often used in things like gas chromatographs. Impurities there, drastic effect on the data. So QC input ensures these vital resources meet those incredibly stringent quality standards needed for pharma testing.
That's a really crucial point, and their job doesn't stop when the building's up, right? The source says they also design and implement the monitoring programs for this new facility. Environmental and utility monitoring.
Right, so environmental monitoring in a pharma lab, that means keeping a close eye on things like airborne particle counts, temperature, humidity. These can affect everything from instrument calibration to the stability of your samples and reagents. And monitoring utilities, like that purified water we mentioned, means ongoing testing chemical, microbial, to make sure it continuously meets those pharmacopoeial standards throughout the lab's operation.
So build it right, then monitor it constantly to prove it stays right. Makes sense. The source also calls out sample management systems as a critical backbone. This role develops and implements robust systems for receipt, login, tracking, retention.
Robust is definitely the word, and maybe traceable too. Meticulous tracking is just non-negotiable in a GMP, good manufacturing practice environment. From the second a sample walks in the door.
Whether it's for manufacturing, a stability study.
Exactly. Raw materials, whatever. It needs a unique ID. Its arrival documented, its movement tracked through every single stage of testing. Chain of custody maintained.
Well, it's like a lot of paperwork or digital work now, I guess.
It is, but it's not just bureaucracy. It's essential for regulatory compliance, for preserving the integrity of that sample, and for having a complete, indisputable audit trail if anything goes wrong or during an inspection.
And retention. Keeping samples.
Yeah, samples, especially stability samples and retained samples from finished batches, they have to be stored under controlled conditions for defined periods. Sometimes years beyond the product's expiry date, just in case you need to retest or investigate something later.
Wow! So they're building the entire framework for how every single sample is handled, tracked, and documented. Okay, what about the stuff used for testing, reagents, and standards? The source mentions managing those too.
Absolutely fundamental. You can't do accurate analytical testing without high-quality reagents and properly characterized reference standards, so managing them correctly is key. Qualification here means verifying that a reagent or standard is actually suitable for its specific analytical job.
So fit for purpose.
Fit for purpose,
Yeah.
exactly. And that it meets predefined specifications before you ever use it in a real test. This might involve checking purity certificates, confirming concentration, maybe running specific performance tests on it.
So ensuring the testing ingredients themselves are up to snuff.
Precisely. They're the foundation you build accurate results on. And then there's managing the inventory and the life cycle. That means keeping accurate stock levels, knowing exactly where everything is stored, and critically, meticulously tracking expiration dates.
Can't use expired stuff, obviously.
Obviously. And ensuring proper storage conditions are maintained constantly. Using expired materials or stuff that's degraded because it was stored wrong, that invalidates your test results completely. And reference standards, even more critical. These are highly purified, characterized substances used as the benchmark for quantitative measurements. Their management needs extreme rigor because they directly impact the calculation of results like potency or impurity levels.
Okay, so that paints a clear picture of that foundational layer. The physical lab, the utilities, the core systems for managing samples and materials. Now let's shift focus from the lab space and substances to the actual tools, the equipment. The source material is clear. This role oversees the entire life cycle of QC lab equipment.
Yeah, it's described as a cradle-to-grave responsibility. Every piece of kit, from the moment you think about buying it right through to the day it's retired. And it's this delicate balance. You have to ensure full regulatory compliance for every single instrument, but also make sure the lab actually has the capacity to handle the testing workload it's going to face.
Capacity planning. Why is that so vital for equipment?
Well, you need to avoid bottlenecks. If you don't have enough working qualified instruments, testing gets delayed. And that delays the release of manufactured product batches, which ripples through the whole supply chain. It's critical.
And that life cycle starts even before you buy anything, with deciding what you need. The source mentions authoring user requirement specifications URS for new instruments. What exactly is a URS? And why is it so crucial this specialist writes it?
Think of a URS as like the definitive wish list, but translate it into really precise, verifiable technical requirements. It's a detailed document. It outlines exactly what the equipment needs to do, how it must perform under different conditions, any specific features, software, constraints required by the end user that's the QC lab here.
Okay.
The specialist has to author it because they've got that unique blend of understanding the analysis, knowing the regulations, and seeing the operational needs. They define precisely what the equipment must deliver to meet QC's needs and comply with regulations before you even think about buying it. Get the URS wrong.
Big problems later.
Huge problems. You could end up with equipment that simply can't do the job compliantly. Massive waste of time and money.
So they define the needs up front. making sure the company buys the right tool for the job first time. Okay, equipment arrives. Then the source points to a massive responsibility, leading the IQ, OQ, PQ process. Installation, operational, performance qualification. For all lab equipment, they're leading this.
Yes, driving this critical validation. And this IQ-OQ-PQ process, it's absolutely fundamental, non-negotiable in any GMP lab. It's the documented proof that your equipment is installed right, works within its parameters, and consistently performs as needed for its specific job.
Okay, break that down. IQ, installation qualification.
IQ verifies it arrived okay, was installed according to the manufacturer's instructions, and that the environment it's placed in is suitable. Basically, is it set up correctly where it's supposed to be?
Makes sense. Physically correct. Then OQ, operational qualification.
OQ demonstrates it functions correctly within its specified operating ranges. Like for a dissolution bath, OQ might check that the stirring speed is within the required RPM range or the temperature is maintained accurately. Does it work within its limits?
Got it. It operates as specified. And finally, PQ, performance qualification.
PQ is where you prove it consistently performs as required for its specific analytical use. This might mean running tests on known control samples over time, showing the instrument gives reproducible, accurate results under conditions that mimic routine analysis.
And why is this whole sequence mandatory? IQ, OQ, PQ.
Because regulators demand rigorous, documented proof that your equipment is reliable, accurate, and fit for purpose. That's essential to ensure the integrity of the data you're using to make critical decisions about product quality. It's the bedrock of trust in your lab's data.
Absolute bedrock. Okay, beyond that initial qualification, there's ongoing care. The source talks about calibration and maintenance, developing and managing a master schedule for all lab equipment.
Yeah, that master schedule is just an essential organizational tool. Make sure nothing gets missed. No equipment misses its required periodic calibration or maintenance. Calibration itself is different from qualification. It's the process of adjusting an instrument so it provides accurate readings against certified reference standards.
Like setting your bathroom scale with a known weight.
Exactly like that, but, much more precise. Calibrating a pH meter with known buffers or a balance with certified weights.
And why regular calibration?
Because performance can drift. Over time, due to wear, environmental changes, just use. Regular calibration ensures measurements today are reliable and comparable to measurements made yesterday or next month. Consistency.
And preventative maintenance.
That's proactive upkeep, scheduled servicing, cleaning, replacing parts before they fail. Why preventive rather than reactive? Because unexpected breakdowns can completely halt testing. Huge delays in batch release, potential data integrity issues if a run is compromised. Proactive maintenance minimizes those risks, keeps things running smoothly.
Prevents problems before they happen. Always better in a controlled setting. Okay, equipment gets old, eventually needs replacing. The source says this specialist handles decommissioning too, creating and executing formal protocols for retirement. Even getting rid of stuff needs a protocol.
Absolutely. In a regulated world, everything needs documentation and control. A decommissioning protocol ensures it's done properly. That might involve transferring or securely archiving electronic data from the instrument.
Oh, right, the data.
Critical step. Clearing user access, removing sensitive info, physically disposing of it according to environmental rules, and crucially, documenting the whole process. You need a clear, traceable record of what happened to that asset.
So its departure is managed just as rigorously as its arrival.
Wow. Lastly, under equipment, managing service contracts and vendor relationships.
Yeah, liaising with the external companies who do calibration, maintenance, repairs. Managing those relationships well is important for getting timely, compliant service, having access to technical support when you need it, and negotiating good contracts for those critical services, ensuring the support system is robust.
Okay, so we've covered the lab setup, getting the equipment in, qualified, maintained, managed through its whole life. Now let's get into the actual science, the analytical methods used for testing the products. The source says this role dives deep into refining these methods, supporting validation, and continuous improvement. Right, so they provide broader support for method validations across the lab, but they also directly lead certain specific method validations, which is a huge task in itself. They're also key to the annual reviews of analytical methods.
Annual reviews. Why review methods every year?
To confirm they're still fit for purpose. You look at performance data from the past year, check for any updates in pharmacopoeias or regulations, make sure the method is still the right one and performing well.
And they're not just maintaining, they're actively improving, using things like Lean or Six Sigma in the lab.
Exactly. Applying those manufacturing efficiency ideas to a QC lab aims to streamline operations, cut waste, which could be wasted reagents, unnecessary retesting, wasted time, and minimize turnaround times for testing.
Does speeding up lab testing actually matter much?
Oh, hugely. It directly impacts manufacturing. Faster QC results mean faster batch disposition, potentially less inventory sitting around waiting for release. It gets product to patients faster.
So, constantly tuning the lab's engine. The source specifically mentions method transfer, leading the transfer of methods from R&D or other sites into this QC lab.
Method transfer is a formal, documented process. It's needed when a test method, maybe developed in R&D or used at another manufacturing site, needs to be implemented routinely in this new QC lab. You have to prove the receiving lab can run the method reliably and get comparable results to the original lab.
How do they prove that?
Usually involves things like comparative testing using the same samples between labs, detailed documentation of the whole transfer process, and making sure the analysts in the new lab are thoroughly trained and competent on the method. It's all about ensuring consistent results no matter where the test is done.
And then the big one, method validation itself. The source says this specialist authors and executes protocols for validating new analytical methods. What kinds are we talking about?
The source gives good examples. Cleaning methods proving that how you clean manufacturing equipment actually works, removing residues below acceptable limits to prevent cross-contamination between products.
Validating cleaning. That seems unexpected.
It's absolutely critical for safety. If equipment isn't cleaned properly between making product A and product B, residues of A or the cleaning agent could contaminate B. Cleaning validation provides documented proof the process works consistently.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Release methods, the tests done on the final drug product batch to ensure it meets all specs before release. And stability methods, the tests used to monitor the product's quality over its entire shelf life.
And for release and stability methods, validation proves what? Accuracy, precision?
Exactly.
Right.
Proves the analytical procedure is accurate, precise, specific, suitable for consistently giving reliable results for things like potency, purity, identity. It's mandatory proof the method works reliably.
The source also mentions pharmacopoeia compliance, USP, EP, JP, ensuring methods comply with those.
Yes, those are the major global pharmacopoeias. US, European, Japanese. They set the official legally recognized standards for drug quality and testing methods in those regions. Compliance is a fundamental regulatory requirement, ensures international consistency.
And lean laboratory principles pop up again? Seems like a recurring theme, applying manufacturing efficiency to the lab.
It really is. The goals are the same. Improve efficiency, reduce waste time, resources, materials, minimize turnaround times. Like we said, speeding up the lab helps manufacturing, gets product out faster, doing more with less, basically, but still accurately and compliantly.
Finally, under methods, impurity profiling, overseeing development and validation of methods to find and measure unwanted stuff.
Hugely important for safety and showing process control. Impurities can come from the manufacturing process itself, process impurities, or form as the drug degrades over time degradation products.
So they need methods sensitive enough to find these.
Sensitive and specific enough to accurately detect and measure them, ensuring they're below the strict limits set by regulators. It's often complex work, using sophisticated techniques like HPLC-MS or GCMS, pushing the analytical science.
Wow, okay, so they're refining the science itself. That leads us nicely into upholding standards, the quality assurance functions. This is where it gets really interesting, you said. Deeply embedded in QA, focusing on investigations, documentation, preventing issues.
Absolutely. The source stresses ensuring proper documentation. And in pharma QC, documentation isn't just, paperwork. It's the legally required verifiable record of everything done, every test result, every decision.
And proper means?
It means adhering to principles, often called LCOA plus TAILATE, attributable, legible, contemporaneous, meaning recorded at the time, original, accurate. Plus complete, consistent, enduring, and available. Accurate, complete, recorded at the time documentation is the absolute lifeblood of a GMP lab, essential for proving compliance, supporting investigations, surviving audits.
It's the history book, basically.
Yeah.
Transparent, tamper-proof. Got it. And when things don't go to plan,
Yeah.
the source says the specialist leads OSIT investigations.
Right, out of specification, OS, and out of trend, OOT. OOS is when a result fails to meet the acceptance criteria. OOT is when a result is in spec, but deviates significantly from the expected pattern over time.
So something looks weird, even if it technically passed.
Exactly. And leading these investigations is arguably one of the most critical responsibilities. They are incredibly rigorous, following strict regulatory pathways. The goal is always to find the true root cause.
Was it a lab error, instrument malfunction, bad raw material, or
Or a fundamental issue with the manufacturing process itself. Finding the correct root cause is paramount, not just to deal with that specific sample or batch, but more importantly, to implement actions to stop it happening again. Regulators focus intensely on how well these investigations are done.
like a lead detective unraveling the mystery? And the source says they own and drive KPIs, corrective and preventive actions.
Yes. CAPEA is the formal system for learning from mistakes investigations, deviations, audits, OSIT results, and taking action to prevent recurrence. Corrective action fixes the immediate problem found. Preventive action aims to stop that problem, or similar ones, from happening again in the future. This specialist manages the KPAs coming out of QC, ensuring they're implemented effectively, documented, and checked to see if they actually worked. KPA is a core driver of continuous improvement.
The engine translating lessons learned into improvements.
Oh.
Got it. They also manage lab deviations and author-approved change controls. What's a deviation in a lab?
Any unplanned departure from an approved procedure or standard. An analyst uses the wrong amount of reagent by mistake, an instrument drifts out of calibration unexpectedly, a sample wasn't stored quite right. Those could all be deviations.
And they have to be documented.
Immediately documented, assessed for impact on results or quality, investigated if needed, and potentially lead to a KPA.
And change controls are for planned changes.
Exactly. Updating a method, modifying equipment, new software, changing an SOP, anything planned requires a formal change control. Before you implement, it goes through risk assessment, impact evaluation, figuring out if validation is needed, and getting formal approval. This specialist is key in authoring and approving these, making sure changes are assessed thoroughly and don't accidentally break something in the quality system.
Controlling the unplanned and the planned with equal rigor. Okay. The source also lists performing the final review and approval of QC testing data for batch disposition. That sounds like a critical gatekeeping step.
It absolutely is. A final, critical quality checkpoint. Before a batch of drug product can even be considered for release, all the QC data for that batch needs a thorough review and formal approval by someone qualified.
And this specialist is involved there.
Yes, in this crucial final review. It means meticulously checking calculations, verifying all testing followed the approved methods and SOPs, confirming any OS or deviations were properly investigated and closed, ensuring the whole data package for that batch is accurate and has integrity. Last set of eyes on the QC data before it potentially goes out the door.
The ultimate approver of the data, and underpinning all this, standard operating procedures, SOPs. They author, review, approve SOPs for all lab activities.
Yep. SOPs are the detailed step-by-step instructions for virtually everything in the lab: how to receive a sample, operate an instrument, run a test, handle chemicals, document a deviation, everything.
Why are they so critical?
They ensure consistency. Doesn't matter which analyst does the job, they should follow the same steps. They're essential training tools and a fundamental regulatory requirement. The specialist ensures these procedures are accurate, complete, compliant, and reflect current best practices.
Okay, moving on. Stability program management.
Yeah.
Designing, managing, executing the commercial stability testing program.
Right. Drugs don't last forever. They need to stay stable, safe, effective throughout their shelf life under specific storage conditions. The stability program generates the data to prove this.
Oh.
You store samples of the drug product under controlled conditions, often mimicking real market storage, and test them at set time points over years. This specialist designs and manages this complex program, coordinating sample pools, testing. The data proves the product meets its quality specs until its expiry date.
And all that stability data isn't just filed away, right? It's used for trending. Statistical analysis, trend reporting for stability, and annual product reviews, APRs.
Exactly. Data trending isn't just looking at one result, it's looking at results over time, searching for patterns or shifts. For stability, you look for degradation trends, changes in quality attributes, supports the shelf life, helps detect issues early.
And for APRs.
You trend data from multiple batches made over a year. Gives an overall picture of process consistency and product quality. Why trend? It can spot potential problems before they become an OOS result. It's a proactive quality tool, drives improvement.
Wow. The sheer volume and complexity of the QA side alone is immense. And all this happens in a heavily regulated environment. So this specialist is key to ensuring compliance and handling scrutiny from regulators' customers.
Absolutely. which leads us into navigating that regulatory landscape. The source highlights supporting inspections and audits, and really fostering a culture of regulatory excellence in the lab. Inspection readiness isn't a last-minute scramble.
It's built into the day-to-day.
It has to be. An ongoing state of preparedness. How do they foster that? By making sure operations are always compliant. Documentation, always accurate, complete, available. Analysts thoroughly trained, following SOPs, equipment validated, maintained, investigations, KPAs handled rigorously on time.
And they act as the subject matter expert, the SME, during inspections.
Yes, the primary QC SME during inspections by bodies like the FDA, EMA, or customer audits. They're the go-to person.
What does that involve during an inspection?
It means having deep technical knowledge, understanding the regulations inside out, being able to clearly explain processes, present data confidently, answer tough questions directly. It's about transparency and instilling confidence in the lab's work.
And after an inspection, if there are findings, they draft and review the responses.
Correct. Those written responses are incredibly important. They formally address findings, explain the root cause, detail the corrective and preventive actions, and commit to timelines. Regulators scrutinize these responses very closely, so accurate drafting and review by the SME is essential.
Safety first, too. EHS compliance, environmental health, and safety.
Non-negotiable. Labs handle hazardous materials. EHS compliance means strict procedures for safe handling, storage, disposal. Proper use of protected gear, safety equipment like fume hoods, emergency showers. Ensuring ventilation is adequate. Protecting people and the environment. A safe lab is a compliant lab.
The source also explicitly links the training program to the PharmaTalk's promise of quality, developing and maintaining a comprehensive training program for QC analysts.
A robust, documented training program is a fundamental GMP requirement. It ensures analysts are properly trained on methods, equipment, SOPs, regulations, data integrity. Their competence directly impacts data reliability. As the source notes, a highly trained team is essential for delivering quality results consistent with that PharmaTalk's commitment.
And finally, aligning local procedures with the company's global quality policies.
Crucial for consistency across a multi-site company. Ensures uniform quality standards, approaches, expectations everywhere. Helps with regulatory compliance in different regions and presents a unified quality system.
Okay, we've hit the physical lab, equipment, methods, QA systems, regulations. Now, the digital world. Modern labs are increasingly electronic, needing specific validation expertise.
Right, transitioning into system validation, a core area. This specialist leads the development, implementation, ongoing maintenance of critical lab computer systems, ensuring they comply with regulations like 21 CFR Part 11 in the US and Annex 11 in the EU.
Why are those two so key for digital systems in pharma?
They're the foundation for electronic records and electronic signatures. They set strict requirements to make sure electronic records are trustworthy, reliable, accurate equivalent to paper records. And they define requirements for legally binding electronic signatures. Validating systems to meet Part 11 and Annex 11 is critical for data integrity when using software for quality decisions or submissions.
And the source mentions specific systems, LIMS and ELN.
LIMS, Laboratory Information Management System, software to manage and track samples, tests, results, reporting. The digital backbone for sample management, ELN, Electronic Lab Notebook, replaces paper notebooks for recording experimental data, observations, calculations digitally.
Validating those sounds complex.
It is, but essential. They hold the primary, official data supporting quality decisions, batch release, regulatory submissions. You need documented proof these systems capture, process, store, and report data accurately and compliantly.
Data integrity comes up again, championing ALCOA plus principles in the digital space.
Yes, a huge focus industry-wide. Data integrity means data is complete, consistent, accurate, reliable throughout its life cycle. In digital terms, ensuring data is recorded contemporaneously, preventing unauthorized changes, maintaining secure audit trails, data attributable to the person who generated it.
Why such a hot topic?
Because regulators have increasingly cited companies for data integrity failures, inadequate controls over electronic data leading to falsification or errors. It's about trust in the data.
And 21 CFR Part 11 Annex 11 help achieve that.
Precisely. They provide the requirements for technical controls and procedures needed for electronic data integrity, unique user IDs, secure access, timestamped audit trails tracking all changes, secure electronic signatures.
The source also mentions chromatography data systems, CDS, overseeing their validation and administration.
CDS are specialized software linked to instruments like HPLC or GC. They control the instrument, acquire the raw data signal, process it to calculate results, and manage the data files.
So they generate critical results directly.
Yes, critical quantitative data. So they need specific, rigorous validation, ensuring the software calculations are correct, data is secure, a complete audit trail exists. Careful administration within that Pharmatox digital ecosystem is key to ensuring